I'm joined today by James Dalton. James is a structural engineer by trade, a former councillor, and also a fellow Northerner. He's someone I've known for many years, and if I may say so, a man with great insights into what's going on in the world today. He has a vast knowledge on many subjects, so we're going to try and stick to just a few today. James, welcome, and thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Freddie. You've bigged me up a bit there, but
Well, I think it's
it's a
warranted.
pleasure to join you today.
Thank you very much. James, this country's going in the wrong direction. I think a lot of people would agree. Would you agree with that diagnosis?
Yes, I think it's becoming more apparent to more people each day.
It's pretty universally accepted now, isn't it? Whatever your diagnosis is and whatever your prescription is for, uh, mending the situation, I think most people agree that there are problems. I'd love to speak about a few things today with you. The first thing is language. Now, everyone these days is familiar with 1984. Every YouTube comment seems to quote 1984. A lot of
Yeah,
people say things like, 1984 was supposed to be a novel, not an instruction manual, and this kind of thing. And
yes,
it's really becoming a bit cliche. However, I do think I read that book when I was sort of 17, 18. I sort of took it upon myself. I realized it was a classic read. And, the pretentious teenager that I was, I thought this would give me some good intellectual nourishment. And the concepts are very important. And I would say that that book is actually somewhat prophetic. And one of the things that always stuck with me in that story was the way that the citizens of Oceania are controlled by simply the use of language, not physical force, just the bastardization of language, the manipulation of language. So I wonder if we could speak a little bit about that, and how how language has been used as a weapon today to control the citizens of this country.
yeah. Well, it's such a huge subject matter because the language is very much at the forefront, or the manipulation and use of language is very much at the forefront of politics, and the ability of political powers, shall we say, to get the people on board with whatever they're doing by using language as an emotional tool for support is it's got to a point, I believe, I feel, where the output from government when it comes to information has one objective and one objective alone, and that is to numb and control the minds of the populace. I mean, if we take one example of climate climate change, climate emergency, it's become an emergency being something that you've got to do something about immediately, because if you don't, there's going to be a disaster. And climate emergency really started cropping up linguistically. Again, you can do your Google searches. I'm guessing 2016-ish.
I would say, sorry
And
to interject, I'd say it was a bit earlier than that. I remember being at school and seeing a very much alarmist headlines in the
yes,
press.
I think the alarmism has been there for a long time. Climate alarmism, but the actual nature of the linguistics has changed. When I was growing up in school, we had global warming,
Mm.
and we had it was global warming that was a fear. Also, we had the ozone hole in the ozone layer. We were all going to get skin cancer because of CFCs in fridges. Acid rain was going to destroy the forests of Scandinavia, and global warming was the problem that the people needed to address. And so in schools, we knew about global warming, and then global warming that worked till 1990, late 1990s, early 2000s, when obviously the data, those following the data, were finding that actually the temperature that we're recording isn't quite tracking the carbon dioxide increase. We've got the words changed. So we went from global warming, where you can nail somebody down. Excuse me, you're saying that the globe's warming, but all this information over here is telling us that actually that's not happening since 19, I think it's 1997. It might be 1987 when I'm not got the charts, but the language changed. So all of a sudden we had climate change. Now climate change, well, everything can be associated with climate change, but only warming can be associated with global warming.
A conveniently broad definition.
Yeah. And then the climate change wasn't doing it, so climate emergency. The change was changed to emergency. So we have that one issue where we've got language that's been created by political actors, and it's, you can have a chat with a 16-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 14-year-old, and an 80-year-old. They'll all have heard of climate change, and they will have different understandings of what it means, but most will actually believe falsehoods. So they will believe that carbon dioxide increasing is bad, for instance. They'll believe that the globe warming is bad because we don't actually get an explanation. The language is used to manipulate the emotions, but of course, if you want to ask questions and understand more, that's when you realize that the language is bastardized for a reason. So climate change is a fascinating one, and COVID is another fascinating one where the use and abuse of language has created huge social turmoil. And when I say social turmoil, you have almost two worlds. So you'll have a world where people think there was a pandemic in 2020, that there was a new virus that was harmful to the human population, and that the powers that be, the authorities, did a terrific job in limiting the amount of damage that was caused by that new pathogen and that new disease, and they did a terrific job using the best of the best experts to create solutions such that we've got these vaccines. And aren't we all absolutely thankful for the powers that be to for what they've done?
And how was language, do you think, used in that particular case?
And what I'm going to suggest is you've got another world where there are people who look past the assertions from the news media and the government to try and verify what they're saying, because they're interested in truths, not feelings. And so 5 years on, you've got another part of society which thinks that, the government went to war with us in 2020. They used the excuse of a new pathogen, which we can't find any evidence of. So you've got this huge split. And this is all down to the bastardization of language and the conditioning of young people, obviously, especially in the Western world, through educational establishments to think in a particular way, i.e., not think. because we're trained not to think. We're trained to believe. It's not encouraged. Thinking isn't encouraged as it was in the 1970s. The French university system, every university degree, to which a small percentage, 9-10% of the population that I guess the most academically gifted went, they all had to do logic and metaphysics as part of their undergraduate courses, because the society was geared up to bringing on minds to be able to think independently, because that was the basis of future development and future advancement for the nation. That all changed in the 70s and 80s, and there's no logic, metaphysics taught in the top universities in our nation anymore, because that wouldn't be convenient for governmental control.
Mm-hmm. And so these.
So I mean,
sorry, go on, James.
You look, similar things happened in China when the communist revolution changed the nature of their society for well, in that period of time. The similar things happened in Cambodia. Similar in the 70s. Similar things happened in the Soviet Union or in Russia in the 19 teens, and all these governmental systems understood that the mind of the child, was absolutely crucial to the success of the political ideology moving forward. And the minds of the child, what is absolutely critical is that they are influenced not by parents, not by their family, not by loyalties to their community and family, but to the state, the political ideology. That's where the importance of language and the control of language really stems from. And what I'm maybe getting at is that those lessons have not been lost on modern day Marxists, who understand that people won't vote for communism in a straightforward, oh, I'm a communist and I want all your property rights to be destroyed, and we want the means of production to be owned by the Politburo, the state.
Except for Ash Sarkar, who was one of the few
people
to
won't
happily
vote for that. That's the reality in the Western world. So those who wish to achieve the goals of the Marxists, the communists, the collectivists, the authoritarians, that whatever label you wish to put on those who think that a central body of people should engineer and control society, they understand that the control of language is everything, and the control of children's minds is crucial. But they also understand that people won't vote for communism, so they have to achieve their ends through means of infiltration and deception. And the bastardization of language is the foundation of their political success in the Western world, as we see our societies, by all metrics, failing.
One of the descriptions in George Orwell's 1984 said something along the lines of the language was manipulated such that the citizens were unable to formulate any arguments that contradicted the sort of the statements and things from the state. It was you couldn't oppose what was being said by the state, because you literally didn't have the words with which to do it. The language was manipulated to such an extent that conformity was the only real option. What do you think are some of the main words or labels that we hear, or examples of the manipulation of language? I can think of some off the top of my head, which is, just as we've been speaking, which is things like conspiracy theorist or climate denier, to tie in with your climate conversation earlier. Far right, things like this. Are these all examples, and can you think of any more that are particularly?
Well, I think
obvious.
Well, if you're bringing in the 1984 parallel, if you remember in the 1984, not only whether there was the 2 minutes of hate, there was the encouragement to express that anger, that hatred, and the terms that you used there, far right. What was the other ones that you?
Conspiracy theorist, climate denier,
Yeah,
anti-vax, these
yeah,
sorts of things.
yeah. I mean, the best ones are, I think, are racist, misogynist,
Hmm.
Islamophobe. Those are the ones that they are tools. That's what they are. They're tools to promote the sentiment that you get from the 2 minutes of hate, and they're labels. So a conspiracy theorist. I mean, you analyze what does that mean? What does that mean? What do the two words conspiracy? Well, conspiracy, that's them more than one person coming together to plot. Now that might be, you might have a conspiracy to open a sandwich shop, which is perfectly fine. You might have a conspiracy to
Generally, I think it has nefarious
kill the monarch.
connotations, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's got so many connotations. But conspiracy, it's basically people coming together
To achieve a
to
particular
plan,
objective. Yeah.
yeah, to plan an objective. Theorist, somebody who theorizes on conspiracies. Well, you could, and the term, I think the term was coined around the time of that post-war period. And funnily enough, the JFK files are being released at the moment, and no doubt there'll be hours and hours and hours of explanations as to what went on in 1963. But conspiracy theorist is a really good way of saying, oh, that guy who's really got something quite interesting to say, actually, put a label on him, and then your conditioned masses can, oh, he's got the label hate, hate, hate. He's an Islamophobe. I don't need to listen to what he says. He's far right. They need to be rejected.
I never thought of the 2 minutes of hate parallel, but it works perfectly in this example.
Yes, and it's expressed by the shutting off of the mind. And most people will be able to resonate. Most people who are concerned about the country are looking at certain metrics. Maybe somebody's looking at demographics and they're looking at immigration, that subject matter. They will find that if they want to raise, even in their family or friendship circle, a discussion on, well, we've got all these reservoirs, and we've got a water system, we've got these sewage systems, and our engineers, like 30, 40 years ago, when they were told to build this infrastructure to supply us with clean water and to treat our foul waste, they were told the population was going to be X. But our government's been importing millions of additional people, and our population is actually X plus Y. So we don't have the water supply system or the sewage treatment system to cater for the humans that are actually on our island. Now, the modern day political response to that is, oh, you're a racist. And all of a sudden you can't talk about the infrastructure and the implications of, oh, we've got another 500,000 people. Where are the schools? What's happening to the road system? Where's the sewage system? Where's the water supply? Where's the electricity grid increase? Where's the doctor's surgery? When this year the top universities take on their undergraduates to train in the field of, let's say, medicine. they will be restricting that intake to a given amount based on what? What are they basing their, we need X number of undergraduate doctors today because we need X number of, or X minus a proportion of doctors in 10 years' time to provide for the needs of our peoples. But if you can't tell the planners what X is, then in 10 years' time, the number is not going to be correct. Now, we've been strangling for instance, that's a specific, and you can, anybody can go and look at the records, but then you become a conspiracy theorist if you start analysing, well, why have we not, why 15 years ago were we not taking on more doctors? When the people who were making these decisions knew that they were going to open the borders and import lots of people through mass immigration because of their racist. Yeah. You can't talk about that. So you can't literally solve problems within your society, because and what we're seeing we're seeing the symptoms of this destruction of language, of communication, of debate, of the acceptance that there are objective facts and realities, and we're seeing the symptoms throughout our society of that, whether it's the price of food, the control of the money supply, which the inflation, the trust in society, how people feel when they walk around their locales. All these symptoms we're now seeing, but they're seeded by ideological, academic, political powers from a long time ago.
This conditioning of the mind, as you describe it, that's going on, that's been orchestrated by the state. Some people seem to fall victim to it, and it's almost as though they're in a trance. And other people seem to see it for what it is. Some people are in the former camp and break free later and end up in the latter camp. But for the most part, I think that most people sort of stay where they are. Some people can recognize it and others can't. And what is it do you think that separates those two groups? Why is it that some people are able to question things and think critically, and why is it that other people aren't? Is it to do with just your level of emotionality? Is it an IQ thing? Are we sort of genetically just predisposed to critical thinking or not? What do you think it is that separates it? What are those characteristics?
Oof. That's a huge. You'll get much more academically astute answers from others than I.
I'd love your 2 pence worth anyway, James.
From an observational, one word I would pick out would be curiosity. I think human nature is so varied that you can start saying, "Oh, well, is it an IQ issue? Is it? It may be related in many ways to IQ. I'm not going to suggest." What I find in my experience is I can get common sense. I can see common sense in people who don't necessarily have high IQs, and I can see utter idiocy in those who have qualifications coming out of their backsides.
Are you talking about the midwits here? The 120ers?
The midwits. I don't know who coined that phrase.
I believe it said Dalton.
Was it? Yeah.
It may not be, but I think 120s, as I heard from you originally, it really made me laugh.
Yeah. Again, how it relates to IQ, I don't know. But coming back to your question, I think curiosity. Some people are more curious than others. Some people want to really understand, and some people aren't too bothered. about really understanding. They're more bothered about, enjoying themselves, having a happy life,
Creature comforts.
whatever it might be. I do believe that there is a small number of human beings where it's in their nature that they want to understand, and I think it's from that small slither of humans that it's from there that human advancement and development has come. Whether it's medicine, engineering, whatever. Medicine and engineering are the two big fields that have really advanced, and other things. But even when it comes to the spreading of literacy, you've still got the engineer who came up with the printing press. But yes, obviously other scholars, philosophical scholars. I mean, philosophy is at the kind of the peak of the knowledge pyramid, if you will. It's the science, if you want to call it that. It's the field of human endeavor that encompasses all others. But curiosity, I think that you can get curious people who are not necessarily high IQ. And you can get high IQ people who are not necessarily curious. Materialism, I think, affects these things as well. For some people, it's convenient not to know. You take a lot of political subject matters. Grooming gangs. You've heard that expression, have you? Grooming gangs.
I've come across it once or twice.
Yeah, I was brought up I went to school in the 70s and 80s, so presumably grooming gangs. That's these
hairdressers and such, isn't it?
Groups of people who go around brushing people's hair and maybe giving them a bit of a shave and a bit of a manicure.
But presumably there's also pet grooming gangs as well that go around and
pet groomers,
do poodles and that sort of thing.
So to bring the linguistics back, talk about the subject of Pakistani rape gangs and the industry that is in operation in Britain. That's grown and grown and grown, and nobody really wants to talk about it. And the reality is, there's a very, very simple reason for that. Who wants to talk about young girls being abused? Nobody wants to think about that or talk about it. And for most people, it's easier to accept that it's not happening. Now, when you use the term grooming gang on the radio, it kind of slips through the eardrums and out the other ear of the radio listener, and they don't have to think about it too much. But if you use language like child rape gangs, then the average concerned listener will think, what the hell? What? And they're engaged, they're snapped out of the trance, if you will. But that's the control. That's the control, is keeping the people in the trance, such that the curious, the knowledgeable, don't get their voices heard and amplified. Get the 2 minutes of hate amplified, and keep the objective truth in the background, because it's not palatable, and it's only talked about by racists and Islamophobes and misogynists, and they're far right.
Exactly. Yeah, it seems to me that the people who are capable of critical thinking are obviously in a very small minority, and I suppose it's only unless I should say, that group reaches a sort of critical mass.
That's not going to happen.
Perhaps not. And I think the powers that be are probably aware of the numbers of people, or the proportion of people that are sort of a bit clued up on this sort of stuff, and they'll do what they can to.
I don't know what the proportions are. You can just recognise the different characteristics in humans. But the government, the propagandists, this is huge science, and they will be a lot more aware of those numbers and the data surrounding what is needed to manipulate people. And those who are watching and are curious and are looking are seeing this madness because we're getting a tsunami of it.
Yeah, James,
we're getting a tsunami of it because the advancements in the technology that have come along from the 1970s, where really all this manipulation had to happen in the universities. If it wasn't happening in the universities, the people, right? Sorry, I just had a small disturbance there, Freddie.
Oh, that's
Lost my
okay.
track.
No, it's all right. I was
But
just
yeah,
thinking as you were saying that about the school system. I think that, of course, school rewards conformity really above all else, and of course, it discourages challenging of accepted and established views, and that's why I suppose as well the people that tend to do the best, who at least within the sort of structure, if you like, of our society, within the sort of hierarchy that we've sort of imposed, people that tend to do the best are the ones who are the most conformist. So I suppose that from a very young age, it's children are sort of implicitly taught that to challenge conventional views and and all that is not going to get them anywhere. And that's, I think, the discouragement of critical thinking just starts very early on, doesn't it? Even if children are not aware of
no
it,
doubt
it's
about
implicit.
it. Critical thinking is not conducive to collectivist regimes. So when you it's difficult when we're talking cross generationally, and a person who's gone to school in Britain in the 1950s and 60s will have different experience to 70s and 80s. And for instance, when you're talking about the critical thinking, I was encouraged when I was going through my schooling to think critically, to be curious, to not accept things at face value. Nullis in verba is the Latin moniker which the Royal Society adopt, and it translates as take no one man's word for things, or something of that. Look, I'm a Yorkshire guy. I'm not a Latin student, but the concept being, no, you don't just accept somebody's word for it, and you need more than that. You can't hang your beliefs on the words of one person, one thing. In other words, doubt. I think, therefore I am. The doubter, Descartes, when he broke through with that one, when he went through his years and years of agonizing on philosophical matters about the existence of things, and then he realized, oh bloody hell, I'm thinking, therefore I must exist, and he built his philosophical. But yeah, we see, especially younger people, and I can't speak for what children are experiencing directly, but it saddens me that, for instance, going back to the issue, the subject, climate change, okay, and I've got I've had experiences in my life which have forced me to look into the subject quite closely from my professional profession as a structural engineer, and my interactions with the Royal Society and on this matter of climate change. But younger people, they want to talk about what the solutions are to climate change. They want to talk about, well, hydrogen, and an interesting technology, hydrogen powered things. They want to talk about battery powered electric cars, renewables. whatever that means. And they have this inbuilt, almost religious belief that hydrocarbons and the burning of them is bad. So it's very difficult as an engineer who has a different understanding of these matters to that of a person who's getting their offer from British schools, for instance, that you can't even talk about they've already accepted this is a problem, reaction, solution. So when you want to bring up, and this is the classic climate denier, and I bring up the climate change because of all issues that is infecting us as a Western society, and affecting the influence when people go out to a ballot box to vote, is probably the climate change issue. Because young people, it's the psychological impact of this. I'll call it what it is. It's a hoax that carbon dioxide increasing is an existential threat to mankind. That it has affected the psychology, and this is the modern day collectivists' prime issue, and it's an issue of mind control, problem, reaction, solution, and they quite successfully embodied that belief because of the lack of curiosity, because of the lack of critical thinking, because of the bombardment over decades of neuro-linguistic programming, that intelligent young people, once they might be really up to how they can design a system to transfer hydrogen gas instead of methane gas. It's different technologically. It's a lot more difficult because the hydrogen molecule is a lot smaller. So valves and seals and all this. Before you get into the issue of how the hell do you make the hydrogen in the first place, and what the energy equations are involved in all that. But they're not thinking. Oh, hang on. What is the problem that we're trying to solve here? They've already accepted the lie. Now, whether they have or not is a different issue, because that's when you get into the media control of information and the global control of information, because it's very difficult to establish exactly what people are thinking. But yeah, we're living in strange times, and our society is not falling to pieces by accident. It's falling to pieces because of we are now seeing the symptoms of fundamental attacks on our society on a psychological level for over many years. And the issue of language is so important because we need to be able to communicate clearly with one another, and without the foundation of definitive meanings for words, we're not in a position where we can communicate with one another clearly. It's really as simple as that. You can have a discussion about something and it might make sense to you, but if you're using certain words, then your audience is going to be hearing something very different. And again, it's a very Marxist thing to change the meaning of words, to develop words, to amend words, to encompass new meanings into words.
Language is fluid, of course,
Every
is what they
time
say.
you do that, there was a reason why English was such a fundamental backbone to the Industrial Revolution and the advancement of humans, and that was because we had the structure of a definitive language where people could communicate very clearly, such that their minds could meet. If you do not have that, one word that I think we discussed previously, that from your previous interview was nationalism, and how that word in itself can, in the political realm, it's you've got to be very careful, because an academic can tell you exactly what nationalism is, but what do their audience understand by the word?
Mhm.
And when you have a discussion on nationalism, this is the fog of language that if you're not careful, you can't break through, because you're not defining your term. What does it mean? And when I hear people talk about nationalism, I can hear different people talk about it, and I know that they've got different understandings to them of what nationalism means.
I absolutely agree. Strict definitions on words are absolutely essential. They're of paramount importance. Quite a few
Yeah,
people.
but
You're
could I
familiar with.
add?
Yeah,
Could I
go ahead.
add that not having definitive definitions of words is of paramount importance to those who, without identifying them, who have committed to the destruction, and it's become a self-seeding
Sure.
destruction of let's call it Western civilization as we know it. And as
Yeah.
we know it, well, what do we've got different understand what is Western civilization? British Empire bad. And in order to, we're in a position, I say we, those who are curious, who wish to see a society which is getting happier, more prosperous, more free, more peaceable, less criminal. Those who want to see that, we need to appreciate that foundation of language, it's been hacked away at, it's been eroded,
Mm.
and we need to be we've got to be open and cognizant of this bastardization of language in our when we share what we hope we can share about the realities of the world.
You bring up there changing, making our societies more peaceful, more prosperous, all that sort of thing. Now, this is something that most people would attribute to, or most people would associate with, the state, the role of the state. So I want to just move on a little bit onto that subject, if we can, James, which is the role of the state. What is the state for? Some people believe in a limited government. Some people believe that the government should be involved in many different areas of our life. Now, these days, of course, whether you want to call it left or right, the government, in one way or another, is involved in virtually every aspect of our life. And some think that's a good thing. Some don't believe that's a particularly good thing. In your mind, what is the legitimate role of the state?
Again, I can give you my take on that, which is based on my personal religious and ethical convictions, I guess. What is the role of the state? The state, the government, the state, again, goes back to the nationalism question. What is the state? Is that Yorkshire for me? Or is it Huddersfield? Or is it England? Or is it Great Britain? Is it the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland? Is it the EU, the Eurozone? But what's the role of government? For me, I'm going to paraphrase. Winston Churchill had quite a good one, which was that the role of government is to make sure that an Englishman can leave his house safely on a morning, go about his day's business, and return to his house on an evening for his dinner, without having to worry about his security and safety, and without having to. Also, I've got a really interesting poster that the Conservative Party put out in the 1940s. I think it was an election poster, and it was basically, "Do you want the state in your house?" And it's a whole load of government inspectors like prying and looking into whatever you're doing. But there are those who us who don't really want help. We grow up, we learn from our parents, we become adults, we take responsibility for our lives, we take responsibility for our wives, our children's lives, our wider families' lives, and the better men, also take responsibility for, and women for the local cricket club, maybe, or that they'll engage in community and civic responsibilities.
Mm.
Now, there are others who can't, don't, won't take responsibility for themselves, and the proportion of these people is changing. And Western, again, it's part of the legitimate role of government. I would summarize as being protecting our national borders, and for me, that's the borders of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and funding a court system based on the principles of common law, which we bequeathed through generations. But we're so far away from what I see as being the role of government. We're in a place where I would say the majority of people think that the government has a role, a parenting role. I don't want that.
Mm.
A lot of people do, and those that do, it's like it's an ever growing basket. It will not decrease. It will not slow. It will not deflate. It will only increase. And that maybe the government should be responsible for our health care. Oh, maybe the government should be responsible for teaching our children. Oh, and it goes on and on and on. Maybe they should be responsible for teaching our children, and not only that, that parents shouldn't be responsible for teaching their children.
Mm.
And then hang on, no, the government actually is in charge of teaching your children, and if you don't like what they're doing in schools, then you're a far right conspiracy theory, racist, Islam. You see where we've gone. I mean, I'm very much at what you would call the small government, small c conservative, small l libertarian, yet not theoretical purist libertarian end of what the government should be involved in.
Sure.
But there you go. I mean, I would like a government that was actually believed in our nation, the United Kingdom, understood that its responsibilities were to those people of the nation and those people alone, were cognizant that we lived in a world where not men are all men are good, equal, tree-hugging people who want prosperity for all, and acted in accordance with the reality of human nature, that no, there are bad people who want things for nothing, who are prepared to do bad things to get it.
Mm. Of course, what a lot of people don't realize is that with all the different forms of tax that we pay in this country, there's obviously income tax, there is value-added tax on everything you buy, there's stamp duty, fuel tax, alcohol tax, etc., etc. There's death tax, so many different forms of tax, and of course,
fuel
depends.
duties.
Yeah, depends on, of course, your
fuel
level
duty. You got tax on that. You get VAT on top of your fuel duty.
Yeah, so it all adds up, and it means that really, of course, it depends on your income level and how much wealth you have, and how much wealth you bequeath to your children and so on when you die. But really, for most people, it amounts to well over half of the time they spend earning money is really working for the government, and it brings up the question of who owns you. Do you own yourself? Are you your own property? Or are you property of the collective, the tribe, the state? collectivism is fine, provided that it's done voluntarily, that it's on a voluntary basis. Of course, we all need collectivism. We are collectivist by nature. We collaborate with each other. We work together for common
Yeah, I
goals.
think
That is just human nature. But
the
the key is
voluntary
that
is
it's
the
voluntary. And this is the problem with the state, that it uses coercion. So would you say that we own ourselves, or should we belong to the tribe? Is it a moral or legal? Of course, there's a moral question there as to whether or not we should live in service of other people, which I think is a good thing to do. But should we be coerced? Should we ultimately have the choice as to how we spend our time, how we live our lives, and what we do with our own human body?
Well, yeah, and you've also you picked up on something there. Accept that you're part of the tribe. Well, what is the tribe? Is it your family? Is it the family and the families that you live near? Is it the human race? Is it the country? These are the boundaries. These are the fundamental foundational realities of what it is to be a human that have been whittled away, that have been attacked, particularly in the Western world, over decades. So, yeah, I mean, it all comes down to the word voluntary, doesn't it? Are you a free individual, or are you not? And if it's coerced, if you are not voluntarily, what's the difference between a volunteer worker and a slave? Well, one's volunteering.
Mm.
Uh, um,
One isn't
to
coerced. One is doing it on their own volition.
One is under the power of another human being.
Mm.
Now, whether it's a slave keeper, where it's where it's literally one human being denying liberty to another human being and extracting productive work out of them for their benefit, or whether it's a state doing the same thing. It's the same relationship. So I don't know if that answers your question, but absolutely, it's wrong to coerce. It's not a matter of whether you are part of your tribe, and different people can argue about what their tribe might be.
Yes.
Right. I'm a mongrel. I'm a mixture of. I'm a border reaver, so I'm from the borderlands between Scotland and on the English side of the borderlands between Scotland and England. My blood is, a bit of Celtic, bit of Viking, bit of Scots, probably, bit of who knows.
Mm. I think it was Bede who said of the people of this island, that we are of one blood and one bone, and that includes the Angles, the Saxons, the Celts.
Yeah, and I tend to have, it brings us back to that Rudyard Kipling poem that I was reading to you earlier, about that basic understanding of where a human being is. Might not like the guy that you went to school with. He might be your arch enemy, but there's something about him that you actually understand. You understand the land he's walked on, the people he's interacted with, and there's an understanding there, even with the people from your family, if you will, tribe, who you really don't like. Yet this you start mixing the tribes together, and what happens? Well, we're in that time in human history where that's FAFO time, where Western societies are now trying to get to grips with, well, hang on, this isn't actually panning out as we thought it was going to. I know we're not going to go into balkanization and multiculturalism, but Merkel admitted it 15 years ago. She said to her electorate that in October 2010, multiculturalism has failed.
I believe Cameron and Macron also
utterly
did.
failed. Cameron came out with some similar kind of propaganda spiel at that time, and So did what was going on there? What was going on when they made those admissions and then followed it up with the inorganic? It wasn't organic. It didn't come from the people, of whether it's Germany or Portugal or France or England or Denmark. They weren't shouting out at the standing outside Parliament and saying, "Import more Iraqis, please. Import more. We need more Sudanese people in Bristol." That's not what was going on. But despite the admissions at the very top of European politics, Merkel, Cameron, that multiculturalism has failed. I don't know what, have they redefined it or something? I don't know. But what happened after that was political actions from every political power structure to write into law, into international treaties, the engineering of European society by the importation of millions and millions of people from other parts of the world, predominantly the Middle East, Far East, not Far East, India, Pakistan, Africa. And so those political decisions were kind of made a long time before, don't get me wrong, a long time before 2010. But 2010 was the acknowledgement, and this is where it gets very Orwellian. The 2 + 2 = 5, right? So now it's the telling you what they're doing before they do it, even if it sounds absolutely mad. Which is why we've got world record holders for women's sports that are men. Now, you will accept that 2 + 2 = 5. You will accept that a man can be a woman and a woman can be a man. You will not entertain objective truth.
James, you've touched on a few things there that are very much examples of top-down impositions of policies, ideas, ways of life. They haven't come from the people, they've come from the state. Now,
I'm singing a miserable tune, Freddie, to you.
It's all right. We're in a miserable state in this country, so it's fitting. I just wonder, in the short time we've got left, can we speak a little bit about solutions?
Yes,
And
right.
I know that now I don't know much about this next topic, but I know it's something that you have an interest in and something you advocate for. I wonder if we could speak a little bit about direct democracy as a potential solution to some of these problems with, government overreach and, totalitarianism, if you like, a load of decisions being taken on our behalf that we disagree with. What is direct democracy, first of all, and how could it help?
Well, direct democracy is, I think, a term that people are starting to pick up on and trying to get an understanding as to what exactly it is. And the reason for I think, fundamental direct democracy. So, what's democracy? What is democracy? It's intrinsically it's the power resting with the people.
Majority will, isn't it?
Yeah. So it obviously comes from the Greek, and you can read your Greek history and where decisions were not being made by everybody, the masses, but being made in a forum where people had a vote. That it wasn't everybody; it was the moneyed classes or whatever. But consensus was sought for political decisions. Now, direct democracy for the United Kingdom, I'm a big advocate of it on a number of levels. Number one, who represents us? Who represents us, the people? And there is nobody. We're represented usually by an MP who is signed up with a political mafia, whether it's Lib Dem, whether it's Labour, whether it's Conservative. They're not representing you. And most people wouldn't be able to tell you who the MP was. They might be able to tell you what party they represented. direct democracy, and again, direct democracy is a solution to the problems that we've got of the corruption within our system. If we acknowledge that the system is broken, it's, well, what can we do about it? Is the system broken because fundamentally the institutions are badly designed, they don't work, and they never could work? Well, you can't take 800 years of British history, English history, whatever, put it in the bin and say, no, we need to start again. But we need to wrestle control back from the forces that control our politics, those forces that own our political parties, which are all running a globalist agenda. And so we're at where we're at. We're in a system whereby we get to vote every now and again, and we can only vote for whatever's put on the ballot paper. So in the last general election, for most people, it was, you can vote for party A, B, C, and all of them will accelerate mass immigration. They will all destroy our economy through allegiance to this belief system on carbon dioxide and what it is. And you've got the choice of that, or that. So direct democracy is about taking decisions back to local level. That can be simple decisions like, who is going to stand to be your MP? Is it going to be Fred Bloggs there from the locale, or is it going to be that person who's been vetted, scrutinised and chosen by Conservative Party HQ or Labour Party HQ? Well, who's running those organisations? Are they British? Are they foreign? What's their objectives? We can see that the traditional political parties are corrupted, and they can be decorrupted very simply by implementing direct democracy at a local level, so that people choose who their candidate is going to be for those parties. That's a simple side to direct democracy. Direct democracy is, we live in a world, social media, where anybody can get on Twitter, they can find out what's going on, they can express an opinion. That opinion counts for nothing. Why does it count for nothing? Why aren't policies discussed? Why do laws come out and are generated, and we get no say on them? And the first time we hear about them is when they're being reported as they've been passed. Nobody talked about them. Nobody talked about them in the manifesto. There's no accountability. So direct democracy intrinsically is this answer to the corruption in the system. How you get there is a different matter, and how it is attuned to English law and the English constitution is also another matter. But we can look at Switzerland, for instance, who have they implemented direct democracy in 1848, and in the preceding 175 years, Switzerland has not engaged in any foreign wars. It's become one of the safest places in the world to live. It's got a GDP per head of population that is the envy of the rest of Europe, and they make their decisions on a canton. They've got a very they've got a habitual culture of engaging in civics, where people can propose initiatives for changes in the law, or and ultimately for changes in the law, the people get the final say. So the government can't implement, without the consent of the people, policies and enforce them on the people. And that very application of a leash, and don't get me wrong, there are powers that in Switzerland and global powers that want to break into the Swiss system. They want to use propaganda, manipulation of minds, the manipulation of the education on children to ultimately they'd like to get rid of the direct democracy so they've got a free hand to do what they want. But the results of direct democracy over 175 years in Switzerland tell us so much about the success that comes to a society which is constrained by its peoples, whose government is constrained by its peoples, and whose government's actions have the acknowledged consent of the governed. Now, it's in Britain, we've not got that similar level of engagement on a day-to-day basis. Historically, we get to vote in the council elections once a year, mostly once a year. We get a general election vote now and again, and people are generally totally turning off from the electoral process as a mechanism to change the zeitgeist and the direction of the country. What I would say is, yeah, you can disengage, but if you disengage, that is the fence sitting. You're not going to change anything, because ultimately, without the consent or the perceived consent of the people through democracy, because Keir Starmer will say, "Oh no, we've got the consent of the people. We live in a democracy. I'm the government. I've been legitimately elected," and on a base level, he's correct. In reality, he's not interested in any of that. He'll do what he wants to do, and the British public, he doesn't give a monkey's what they think. He's following the ideological pursuits of his paymaster, but he's still got the protective cloak of democratic legitimacy. So without engaging in the process of what we have now, we cannot we can't have any direct democracy. If you try to sell this amongst them, funnily enough, the Tories in 2008, I think it was, they wrote a whole booklet, a whole pamphlet. They signed up to it. All the names, Sajid Javid, Priti Patel, Michael Gove, and it was direct democracy for the United Kingdom. An offer. Douglas Carswell was one of the prime authors of that document. But really, what was going on was the Tories had 13 years of trying to break the Blairite stranglehold on the British populace. And once they'd broken that stranglehold, because people got fed up, they'd gone through the period of time, oh, it's not doing, the Gordon Brown's an idiot, what's he sold the gold off for, the economy's not doing right, 2008 crash, blah, blah, blah. Sod it, let's give the other guys a go. Oh, that Nick Clegg, he sounds like a nice guy. So we get 13 years of Tory, well, of really Lib Dem, Europhilic, one world government rule, with the veneer to the red meat to the gammons, if you will, of, we're a Tory party, we're a Conservative party, we're going to stand up for British values, blah, blah, blah. It's kabuki theatre, what we see. To break that, there's no shortcuts. People who are concerned, who want a better life and future, they can watch from the sidelines, they can comment on the downhill trajectory of the nation, they can look at the symptoms, the ever-growing symptoms. There's no shortcuts. Without people getting involved on a mass basis in civics, that means parish councils, town councils, local councils, local school governorships. People are not engaging in those activities, and if they don't, they will continue to be dominated by the Soros-funded network of community groups which are infected and infested with the woke mind virus, and they're paid. You pay somebody 30 grand, they'll turn up to the, they'll be the Labour councillor on the parish council. They'll organise the youth group event or the Rainbow Warrior event at the local school, and you've got this army of people using taxpayers' money to continue the pollution of the minds of the country. And if people don't get involved in civics, in the running of our institutions, if they don't get involved in the removal of these infected mind virus from our institutions, then there's not a lot of prospective positivity. If people and people are coming to direct democracy. I saw a couple of MPs that were keen on looking at that when the assisted dying bill came in, or the state-sponsored murder bill, as I would refer to it, that is being pushed through Parliament as we speak. We saw it in 2016 when, whatever side of the fence you were on, and I was very much for leaving the EU, because I don't like government, and I certainly don't think we should have any foreign influence or involvement in the governance of our country. We saw that in the referendum vote, where the turnout, people actually were bothered. They wanted to express their opinion because it was, we get a decision on what's going on here. So, bang, all of a sudden 72% of people come out. Well, if you get 35% in your local council election, and you're choosing the person who's spending your council tax money, people were bothered about the EU because it was a decision they could make. They're not bothered about the council because whether you vote for the Labour, the Lib Dem, or the Green, or the Tory, what you're going to get is spending on socialist bollocks. And
yeah,
it's not just that. Sorry, excuse my French, but it's not just that. It's we do not believe in basic accounting. We do not have any constraints to our spending. If we overspend, look around the room. Is anybody going to say anything or stop us? No. These structural mechanisms are accepted and allowed. Why? If you run operations like if you're a financial officer in a council, right? If you were in any other corporation in the country, you'd be serving time for what you're allowing to happen within your financial entity.
This is something we spoke about briefly offline, and I'd definitely like to have you on again, James, to speak about your time in the council, because that will give people, I think, a fascinating insight. I remember you telling me that the levels of incompetence and corruption were far beyond anything the average person could possibly imagine. I'd definitely be keen to explore that in the future. But James, just to wrap up, we'll call it time in just a moment. I just wanted to ask you a bit of a final question, because obviously it's been quite, it looks like a bit of a gloomy outlook, and you've spoken about direct democracy there and how that could perhaps be one of the solutions. In a more broad sense, I just wondered how long you think things are going to deteriorate for, and when do you think we'll bottom out before we can start to see, a reawakening and a revitalizing of our country?
I think they're going to have to. I think the symptoms of the problems that we face are going to have to get a lot worse and maybe change slightly before anything in our country happens. But I think our country is going to be we're leaves in the wind. I think changes are going to be coming geopolitically, which will reframe, where we're at and what the future might entail.
So nothing good in the next 5 or 10 years, then?
Well, it's going to be very interesting to see how the attempted counter-revolution in the United States pans out, and whether if the people can't retake control of their institutions and their countries, then I think the communist model of human farming will spread to to our country, and the rest of that's the trajectory that we're going on. We are farmed units, and we may or may not be convenient in the long term. So if people don't get involved at the grassroots, and that's where that's the power of the direct democracy. But without people getting involved, in reality, how many people of my generation, 56, have a clue what's going on in today's schools? Mm. They'd be if they walked into a school and walked around, they and just looked at the walls on the schools, they'd be shocked. But they don't know it's happening. And direct democracy is a solution to the problem being the utter corruption of our institutions through the corruption of our political system. And it's the old adage, isn't it? When good men do nothing, evil prevails. And we've had a damn sight too long a time of good men doing nothing. And the problem that the good men will face is, well, what is it that we can do to turn the ship around? And maybe we'll talk about this on another occasion, not the tag end on the end of a discussion. Direct democracy, what does it mean other than returning power to the people and putting a leash on parliamentarians or councillors or whatever? What else does it mean? What other implications does it have for the benefit of our society? And is it achievable considering the current state that we are at now? And I'd say the answers to those questions are yes and yes, if I put my glass half full hat on.
Splendid. Well, James,
metaphor.
James, thank you very much indeed for that. I'd love to do this again and speak about some other subjects, especially some of your insights into American politics, some of your experiences with the council, and with
the Royal Society on the climate change issue, because it's such a fascinating yet tragic situation that we find ourselves in on that one.
Yeah, no, that would be good. James, thanks so much for your time. Really interesting conversation. And is there anywhere that? Thank you. Is there anywhere that people can follow you on social media, that kind of thing? Do you want to give out your Twitter handle or anything else?
No, I would encourage people to go to ddrightnow.com. And if people are interested in the political game and getting involved in the political game, I would encourage people to follow a few people. I'd keep an eye on what Reform are doing. I know that might be controversial, but they are a political entity that's kind of come along and has public notice. I would encourage people to go to Andrew Bridgen's website, which I think is andrewbridgen.uk. Don't quote me on that. To see where he's going. He's seen it from the inside, from behind the curtain, if you will. And it'll be very interesting to see how he's moving forward. I know he's got an interest in direct democracy. And there's more information on direct democracy at 4dd.uk. 4dd.uk.
Superb. Thank you very much indeed for that, James. Well, it's been a pleasure. And
okay, then,
I hope to do this again sometime. If you're up for it.
And maybe I'll have a Twitter feed that I can clean up and point you in the direction of next time we speak.
Well, that would be fine. But no, thank you very much for referencing.
You can also find me on the complaints section of Kirklees Council's website, where and again, that's an interesting discussion for another day. How what is going on in our councils?
I believe you have some accolades to talk about in that regard, but yeah, let's save that till next time.
I think I am the most complained against councillor in Kirklees.
I'm sure you
a lowly, unpaid parish councillor.
I'm sure you wear it with a badge of honour.
Yeah, absolutely.
James, thank you so much, and
okay, Freddie.
Speak to you again soon.
Lovely talking with you.
And you. Thanks, James. Bye bye.